All right, John chapter 12, just for a minute, really John 11, then into 12, just for a second. Then I want to go somewhere else. It's going to take us this week and next week. Okay, so where we ended, we were talking about, we were making the point that Jesus, his frustration is not inappropriate. As a matter of fact, it's expected, because you got a group of people who just don't get it. And there's some frustration there that is not sinful by any stretch of the imagination. He's righteously indignant with them. And we said, we kind of talked about the last thing that's said out loud is verse 44, unbind him and let him go. And I told you last week at the end of class, I find that interesting. I find it curious, I guess. It's just one of those things that sticks out to me, that Jesus doesn't take advantage of that opportunity and teach a 30-minute sermon. At least we don't have it recorded. Maybe he did. Maybe we just don't have it recorded. But you would think that would be a time, he just raised someone from the dead. You would think that would be a time where you'd see a lot of red in your Bible, where Jesus said, do you see what I just did? Now let me tell you about what the resurrection of the dead is all about. Let me tell you. You would think, that's the way I operate, at least after he pulled this incredible thing. You would think that would be the perfect opportunity. And instead, he just says, unbind him and let him go. John tries, I think, this is just my opinion, you can do with it what you will. John tries to explain why from verses 45 to the end of the chapter. And it's because many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. Some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. And this plot begins to get rid of him, and not just run him off, but to actually kill him. And that's where we stopped last week, was Caiaphas telling them, hey, look, you need to understand, it's better for one man to die for the people than the whole nation should perish. And we didn't have time to get into that. I would imagine you're all Bible students and very intelligent Bible students. You know what he's meaning by that. There was a standing threat from the Romans that if the Jews got out of hand, they would turn their soldiers loose, the Roman soldiers loose, to just kill every Jew they found. And so Caiaphas is trying to protect his own neck, and he's trying to sort of gain favor with the Jewish leaders. And he says, look, you guys know, if you'll put to death this one man, that'll put a stop to all these believers, quote, end quote. It'll put a stop to all this movement of following Jesus. If you'll get rid of him, that'll put a stop to all of that. All right, so verse 54 of John 11, Jesus therefore no longer walked openly among the Jews. I went back and read that, and I don't know, it just breaks your heart, because the Jews are what? What are they supposed to be? The chosen people of God, right? That's what they're supposed to be. And here in John 11:54, what do you hear? The Son of God is on the planet and can't walk even in a crowd of Jews. Like there's sort of some imagery there that's important. That's the point. Like John, this is the point. This is the breaking point. John tells you this is where it all came to a close. Like Jesus came, and what was Jesus' comment about the Jews? Was Jesus hating the Jews from the word go? No. Was Jesus bashing the law from the word go? No. As a matter of fact, we've covered it multiple times. He told them, I came to fulfill it. I came to uphold it. And now here you reach this breaking point where John 11:54, Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews. It's a hard thing to read. There's to set the scene for chapter 12, verses 55 to 57, tell you the Passover of the Jews was at hand. Many went up from the country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They were looking for Jesus. I find that interesting. It's not that he's a sideshow, but he is definitely an attraction. And people are wanting to hear what he has to say. So people are coming to Jerusalem, and they're looking for him. And they're standing in the temple talking, and we have John sort of sums up what they're talking about at the end of verse 56. He says, what do you think, that he'll not come to the feast at all? Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, he should let them know so that they might arrest him. Do they have anything to arrest him for? Do they have any legal reason for arresting him? Nope, not one. What are they seeking? They need somebody. One, they need somebody that'll betray him, that'll sell him out. And they need somebody, number two, that'll come up with something they can accuse him of. That's what they got to have. Go back to John 7. You remember when Nicodemus takes what we call kind of a half-hearted stand? In John 7, they said, hey, we got to get rid of him. And Nicodemus says, wait a minute. We're not the type of people to put somebody away without giving them a trial. I mean, in other words, what are you charging him with? And they're so far gone mentally that their response to him is, well, you must be one of his supporters then too. You must be from Galilee too. They're not even listening anymore. What they're saying makes no sense. We're going to take this man and we're going to arrest him. We're going to kill him. Wow, that sounds completely and totally illegal. It is. It is. It's horrifically illegal. But they're going to do it because they just got to get rid of him.
But the group of 54 is a loud minority, isn't it? I mean, they're afraid of the quiet majority. It seems like it to me.
It's frightening. I mean, we've always heard when we were growing up, and even now, you hear the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? That's the idea is if you make enough noise, eventually you'll get the attention. It seems like the group in Jerusalem is actively seeking Jesus not to kill him, but to hear him. But there seems to be this groundswell. I don't know if that's the right word. It's like a pocket of people who are making just enough racket that maybe he's not the right guy. Maybe he's doing something that, it seems like there's that squeaky wheel going on, and the Romans are paying attention. And people like Caiaphas know that the Romans are paying attention. And they say, okay, well, if we make enough racket that he's a bad guy, the Romans will step in and do something about it. And which is going to lead us to our conversation in just a second. I want to make one comment about chapter 12, verses 1 to 8. Just one comment. It's interesting to note this appears to be Mary of Bethany and not Mary Magdalene. There's some debate about that. It really doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't affect your belief in the story, and it doesn't affect your belief in Jesus if it's Mary Magdalene or Mary of Bethany. The reason why I found it interesting that it's Mary of Bethany is because if you notice, Mary is sort of the quiet one. You go back to Luke chapter 10. What's Mary doing in Luke chapter 10? When our introduction to these sisters, what's she doing? She's listening to Jesus, isn't she? And Martha's doing all the work. And Martha says, would you tell her to get up and come help me? And Jesus says, she chose the better portion. Not that what you're doing is wrong, Martha, but she chose the better portion. That's our introduction to it. You get over to John 11, and the follow-up to that is, who's the first person to come out and not accuse Jesus, but confront Jesus? If you'd have been here, he wouldn't have died. That's Martha. Martha kind of goes out, and Mary's kind of the quiet one. So it's interesting that if this is Mary of Bethany, which it seems to be, this goes against her character, at least of what we've been introduced. We've been introduced to a woman that's kind of quiet, kind of reserved, doesn't like to necessarily be the forefront of the picture. And in John chapter 12, she's definitely the forefront of the picture. She walks into the place and she takes this expensive ointment and she pours it all over Jesus' feet, and then she starts wiping his feet with her hair. I mean, she is the center of attention, is she not? Well, what is her goal? Is her goal to be the center of attention? What is her goal? To anoint Jesus. So you got three characters in John 12, 1 through 8. You've got Mary, you've got Jesus, and you got Judas. And each one brings a different thing to the story. You got Mary, who it appears no longer really, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. It's not that, it's almost like she doesn't care if she is seen by people now. It doesn't matter. Look at what he just did. He just raised her brother from the dead. And she says, I have to go and I have to do this because it's proper for me to do this. He's the king. He deserves it. Then you've got Jesus himself who, he is basically letting this happen. And in verse 7 and verse 8, he even calls Judas down. So leave her alone. Leave her alone. The poor you always have with you, but you're not always going to have me. And she knows that. And then you get Judas. Judas is, we would say in the South, bless his heart. He just don't get it. He sees this happen, and his response is, why didn't you take this and sell it and give the money to the poor? Read verse 6 real carefully, John chapter 12. John, the apostle, is not known for his tact. He doesn't really hide his feelings. That's why a lot of people really like John, the gospel, because it's very emotion-based. A lot of it's driven by emotion, and John 12 is no different. He is writing this after the fact. Okay, so after Jesus has died and ascended, John writes this gospel. So he is writing this after the fact. He's looking back, and he writes this particular account down. And when he does, he puts this, and it's not in parentheses, which means he wrote it as he went. And he said, Judas said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it. That's a heavy accusation leveled by an apostle. Through inspiration, no less. Don't forget that part either. John didn't just write that because John had an axe to grind about Judas. John wrote that through inspiration. That's a heavy accusation to level on somebody, to call him a thief. But John does it, and he does it with the support of the Holy Spirit. So that is a powerful verse right there. Don't read over verse 6 and ignore what's being taught there. There's a heavy, heavy price there. Okay? Just wanted to make those quick points. Just there's a lot there in that section. The way that Judas handles the situation, the way that Mary handles herself, and the way that Jesus handles the situation. There's some things to learn there. Okay, I got to stop. I got to move on. Okay, so now go to John chapter 18. Keep in the back of your mind what we talked about at the end of John 11, which is you've got this push by Jewish leaders. You've got people like Caiaphas now involved who are saying, look, if the squeaky wheel makes enough noise, maybe you get the Romans to step in and do something. Okay, well, now here we are in John 18. And we're going to jump through some things very quickly to get to the conversations that we're aiming for. John 18 begins with the betrayal and the arrest of Jesus. You know the characters that are at play here. You've got Jesus, you got a crowd of people, you got Judas. And when Judas comes up with this group of people, Jesus asks a real simple question in verse 4, whom do you seek? They answered him, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus said to them, I am he. Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground.
That's pretty powerful.
I mean, what are those guys there to do? They're there to arrest Jesus. That's what they're there. He said, who are you looking for? Jesus of Nazareth. I am he. And what did they do?
Scared of it.
They're not real sure they want any part of it.
Yeah.
Now that, my father would say, now that the rubber meets the road, now that you're down to the actual action, they all just kind of step back and fall to the ground. I've read this story, I don't know how many times. And I have been guilty of just reading right over that and getting to the rest of the story that I already know. Paint the picture in your mind. A massive group of people show up to arrest Jesus, one guy. And they show up with weapons. We know that. It's a bunch of soldiers. There's some officers. There's some chief priests. There's some Pharisees. They're all in a group, and they come out with weapons, and they all back down. Verse 7, he asked them again, whom do you seek? They said, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus answered, I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go. This was to fulfill the word that he had spoken, of those whom you gave me, I have not lost one. Where is that from? Do you recognize that quote? It's the immediately previous chapter when he's praying to God. He said, you gave me these people and I haven't lost one. So when it comes time for them to be in this mess, if you want to call it that, Jesus says, look, you let these people go. Why? Because I told my Father that you gave me these men and I haven't lost one, and I'm not going to lose one now. So you let them go. Poor old Simon Peter, verse 10. What does he do? Having a sword.
Acts as usual.
Acts is his typical self. He's got horrible aim, by the way. I mean, how do you hit a guy in the ear? I mean, that is the... What were you
always wanted to fight.
I was like, what were you aiming for, Peter? What were you trying to do? You chop a guy's ear off? Good grief.
You know?
He's always itching for something.
He'd come out blue.
He's always itching for something. And
Malchus probably didn't think he had a bad.
Malchus was probably like, what'd you say? Oh, no, that's a terrible joke. Don't laugh at that. But Peter responds in a human way. Like, you go watch a movie, and in the movie, the heroes get cornered by the villains, and always the hero jumps up, throws a punch, and they fight their way out. And that's Peter's whole mentality, is they got us surrounded, they got us captured, and I'll just grab my sword and go to swinging. And Jesus says, stop that. Put your sword away.
He was trying to kill him.
It's almost like he was hesitant.
No, he wasn't trying to shoot him in the hand. He was trying to kill him. And I don't know this, but that's what some feel.
It's almost like Peter just didn't really know what to do. He just knew he needed to do something. I got to do something. I mean, I can't just stand here and let them take him and walk off with him. I got to do something. I'll just go after him. And Jesus puts a stop to all that very quickly.
It's almost a natural reaction to protect someone he loves so much. So,
I got to do something. I can't let them take it. And Jesus stops it and says, put your sword in its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father's given me? There's a lot to that phrase, by the way. That's a phrase they didn't hear. If you remember when Jesus goes and prays in the garden, we have it recorded multiple places. He says, let this cup pass from me. That's not something they had heard. The apostles are asleep, right? I mean, he goes a little further into the garden, falls on his face and prays, Father, let this cup pass from me. They don't hear that. So when he says that, it's an interesting thing for them to hear. When Jesus says, put your sword up, this is what is supposed to happen. And I find that interesting because if you go and you read closely his conversation with God in the garden, he goes and says, if there's any other way, if there's any other way. And when he gets his answer, which is, no, there's no other way. He does not say anything else about it. He's resolute. Come, let's go to Jerusalem. I mean, he knows, he's fine with it. This is what's going to happen, and we're going to do it. And you get that here in this betrayal. Jesus says, look, put your sword up. This is what's supposed to happen. That's what you can read into that comment when he says, should I not drink the cup that the Father has given me? This is what's supposed to happen. Don't swing your sword. Don't create trouble. Stop. Just let it go. Let it happen. Go ahead, Frank.
When they come off the ship and went with Jesus, the apostles, they were some tough people.
Yep.
I mean, tough.
That was
Fight.
it's a flashback probably for Peter to his younger days.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all, in all likelihood, there were some moments where he was probably in some rough spots.
Well, their job was on that, when they was working them ships, working the fish ships, they were fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
And their job was to protect what they had done caught from the thieves.
Mm-hmm.
And they had fought all the way up through it.
There's no doubt. He's a tough guy, and he's looking around, and Jesus says, that's not who we are. Stop that.
Yeah.
Stop that. And then you get this band of soldiers and their captain and the officers of verse 12 of chapter 18. They arrested Jesus and they bound him, which, was there any reason for him to bind him? No. He'd already told him, I'll go with you. It's almost like they expected him to do some sort of like magic trick or something and stop them or do something to them. So it was, when he says, I'm he, it's whoa. We really don't know what to do with him. And then when they get him, it's like, well, tie him up, tie his hands up so he can't. They don't realize that Jesus is going to walk with them. It's fine. I understand. I know what we're doing. They led him to Annas. He was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews. Look at this. Here's a callback now to chapter 11. John 18:14 is a callback to John 11. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews it would be expedient that one man should die for the people. All right, so John reminds you it's a callback to something that's already taken place. John 11, Caiaphas is the one that speaks up and says, do you not realize it would be a lot better for one man to die than for all of us to die? So John 18, John brings that back around in verse 14. It says, remember now. And he does that because he wants us as readers to realize who Jesus is up against. Could Jesus have stopped all of this if he wanted to? Yeah. Yes, he could have. Could have, easily. And I always, some people, it's their favorite song in the book, and that's fine. The he could have called 10,000 angels deal. He didn't need that. He didn't need 10,000 angels. He could have snapped his fingers. He could have pointed his finger. He could have done whatever he wanted to. He could have stopped every bit of it. 10,000 angels or not. 10,000 angels would have been for show. He didn't need them. If he wanted this stopped, he could have stopped it.
He won't stay human.
He could have stopped it. So people are like, well, he could have done this. He could have. Don't lose sight of the fact that he's God. He's raised somebody from the dead. He's healed a bunch of sick people. He has cured blindness. He has cured leprosy. The man has done it all. But the most important thing that he's done is he's forgiven sins because he's God. He didn't need 10,000 angels to stop this. If he wanted this stopped, he would have stopped it, which ought to give you chills every time you think about it, take the Lord's Supper, that he chose this. He chose it. We got this section 15 to 18. John doesn't give a lot of press to Peter's denials. He gives it a little bit. He just doesn't give it a whole lot. He kind of gives it a brief little snippet here, and then he goes back to the high priest questioning Jesus. Then he comes back to the denial, and then verse 27 of John 18, Peter denied it, and at once the rooster crowed. Okay. There's several little conversations here, and I'm not going to be able to get to all of them today, which is fine. I've got next week too that I want to wrap this all up in. The first conversation happens between Jesus and this band of people out in the garden. That's the first conversation. And Jesus tells them who he is. He owns up to who he is. And then he stops Peter from chopping people up. Okay. Second conversation is between Jesus and the high priest. This conversation I have had trouble with over the years. I make no bones about it, because I don't know how, if you are truly a man of God, like the high priest is supposed to be, I don't know how you have this conversation and you don't turn him loose. It bothers me every single time I read it. And I know the answer. Trust me, I know the answer. The answer is the man's not truly a man of God. He's a hypocrite. I get that. I understand that. But it doesn't stop me from feeling just, nauseous. Listen to this conversation. The high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Okay, because remember, we still don't really have a firm grip on what we're going to charge him with. We've arrested him, but we really don't know what we can put on him. So the high priest says, I'm a man of God. I am the teacher of Israel. I will find something that he's taught or that his disciples have done that I can put him on trial for. Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know what I said. When he had said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, is that how you answer the high priest? Now you see what's happened, right? This is no longer a spiritual discussion. What is this?
Authority.
It's authority. It's a political thing. It's not a high priest talking to a teacher. This is a political figure trying to show their authority over somebody who they feel has challenged it. Because to me, what turns my stomach is if you're a high priest and you ask him and he answers that way and a person steps up and punches him or slaps him across the face, as the high priest, should you not jump in between that and say, that will not happen again? You can't do that. We're here having a conversation about the teachings of Scripture, the teachings of God, and you want to turn this into a physical. No, we're not. But he doesn't do that. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I say in verse 3, the guards were from the priest. That was his boy right here.
Yeah.
He was his bodyguard, if you want to call it that.
It's sickening.
A real policeman or anything.
No, it's sickening. It's like they had bought the Roman style of doing things, hook, line, and sinker. These Jewish leaders they truly believed themselves to be on par with the Roman leaders. And that's what the Romans would do. If you talk back to a Roman leader, you got busted up. That's the way it was. And you see them acting the same way. And this man's the high priest. That's why it makes me nauseous to even read that. It's just, you're no longer a high priest. Let's just call it like it is. You're no priest at all, sir. You are no priest at all. If this is the way you handle your business, you are no priest. So here's what Jesus says. If what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me? How do you answer that? If you're the high priest, how do you answer that? You know he's not wrong, right? I mean, we understand that. Of the things we have recorded, did Jesus ever say anything that was wrong? I don't know the answer to that. No. Guess who else knows the answer to that? The high priest. He knows full well Jesus never taught anything that was wrong. So he doesn't have an answer to that. So now Jesus just says, if what I said was right, why are you allowing this treatment? So what's the answer? What does Annas do then? Verse 24. That's it. That's it. I don't have an answer for you, so go talk to somebody else.
Send you somewhere else.
All right, so now help me understand, just so we get the picture completely. How is it that Annas is the high priest and Caiaphas is the high priest? Because verse 19 says the high priest answered him, and then verse 24 says Annas bound him to Caiaphas, the high priest. Okay, which one is it? Which one's the high priest?
I think Caiaphas said he was the high priest that year.
The truth is both of them are. It's the way it worked. Annas was, if you go back to verse 13, Annas is the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Annas is the high priest, but he's passing it down to his son-in-law, Caiaphas. So they are technically both high priests. So when you read that, don't get confused. They're both serving in that. And this is what I guess adds to the nausea. They're both serving in that office because that's literally all it is at this point. It's no longer a position of connection to God. They have sullied that. They've made that ugly. It is now an office, a political office. And guess what? It was just like most political offices. It was filled by people who wanted power and wanted authority, not by people who wanted to do right. And that's sad, but that is the case. It is ugly, ugly, ugly. Now, go down to verse 28. This starts where we're going to wrap all this whole series up next week, but I've got a few minutes here just to get started. So now you've got Caiaphas, you've got Annas. Look at what happens. Verse 28. They led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. Whoa, time out. Wait. I thought Annas bound Jesus and sent him to Caiaphas. Isn't that what verse 24 said? Isn't that what he said? Okay, so now I've got him in just a real short time. Now he's leaving Caiaphas and going somewhere else. What happened? What happened? I thought he was supposed to go speak to Caiaphas and do all this stuff. And what happened? All right, if you go to Luke 22, okay, Luke 22, you get what happens. Okay, so keep your finger in John 18, go to Luke 22, just to set the time so we all get the time stamp here. All right, so while you're in Luke 22, John 18 tells us 25 to 27 that's the final time Peter denied Jesus. That's John's report, okay? John 18:27 says, Peter denied it and the rooster crowed. Okay, here's what happened during that time. It's Luke 22. If you go to 54, you get the high priest's house. We're not told which one, okay? You get the whole denial scene, and apparently about verse 61, you've got this scene where it is believed by the majority of people that he's in Caiaphas's area in this section of Luke, because it would have been an open area out to the courtyard, okay? So Luke 22 tells us when they accuse Peter, this man was also with him. That's verse 59. He is a Galilean. Peter said, man, I do not know what you're talking about. Immediately while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked at Peter. So the belief out there is that when they took Jesus from Annas to Caiaphas, Caiaphas would have been out in a sort of an open type area, and they would have been able to have that eye contact. It does not explain to us why there is no conversation of sorts here. Okay, so go back. You can do this on your own. We don't really have time to go through all of this today, but if you go back into, Mark 14, you don't really get any sort of indication that Caiaphas does this whole interview at all. Mark 14 says the high priest asked him, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with. And the high priest tore his garments and said, what more do you need? Okay, a lot of people have said that's Caiaphas. Okay, that's fine. Doesn't change my beliefs at all. Okay, if you go back to Matthew, trying to do this quickly here. If you go back to Matthew is the only one that gives us a sort of a picture of Caiaphas. All right, and that's in Matthew 26. Okay. The only issue is, and this was brought out by people that are way smarter than me, if you take Matthew 26 and John 18 together, it appears as though John 18 is telling you they took him to Annas, and Matthew 26 is telling you that they arrested him and took him to Caiaphas. The truth of the matter is, who's the high priest? Caiaphas or Annas? Exactly. So the point I'm trying to make is, Matthew 26 gives you Caiaphas. Hey, you tell me. You said you tear the temple down and rebuild it in 3 days. You tell me, by the living God, Matthew 26:63, tell us if you're the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said, you've said so. You get the comment from Mark 14. So if you start trying to tie the dots together, it appears that basically Annas had a spot where he has this kind of conversation with Jesus, and very close to that is Caiaphas, and they have a little conversation with Caiaphas, and in that conversation is when Jesus turns and looks at Peter. Luke 22. Now, you say, okay, Scott, what in the world? Why is it? Why are we spending time on that? Here's why. If those two men were even remotely men of God, and they heard the conversations between each of them, they should have run in with tears in their eyes and their garments torn to pieces for the right reason, not the wrong reason. And they should have said, we've made a horrible mistake. Let this man go. This man's done nothing. He's taught what's right. He's upheld the law. He's done what's right. We've made a horrible mistake. Let this man go. That's what they should have done. For them to hear the conversations that each of them had with this man and the way that he answered, they should have run in and said, stop all this. Stop all this. We made a mistake. But they don't. They don't. And so in John 18, okay, as we wrap up today, and then we'll cover the rest of this next week, They take him to the governor's headquarters. Okay, so now what have we done? We've stepped out of Jewish leadership and we've done what? Yeah. And that's what makes it so nauseous to read. Because they knew what they were doing was a farce. It was a joke. It was ridiculous. They knew it. And they knew there was nothing they could do to put him to death. They didn't have anything to put him to death for. So what are they going to do? Pass the buck, right?
And they knew they was dealing with God on that too.
And here's what's this was the as far as the nausea goes, man, this is like the ultimate, is read John 18 and read the end of verse 28 and tell me it doesn't turn your stomach, the hypocrisy of these people. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters. Why? The hypocrisy. We're traipsing this guy in the middle of the night all over the place, slapping him in the face, beating him up, accusing him. We're going to tell him that he's not who he says he is. We're going to call him every name under the sun. But boy, when we get to the governor's headquarters, we better not go in because we might defile ourselves. You've already defiled yourselves to a point that is unrecognizable by the way you have acted. Not just in this night, but in the weeks and the months and the years leading up to this. You have defiled yourself on a regular basis. But now you have the audacity to trump up charges that are absolutely nonsensical, they're absolutely illogical, and they're absolutely illegal. You have trumped up these charges on this man who has done no wrong. And you have the audacity to shove him into the governor's headquarters and say, well, we can't go in, we might defile ourselves. I've never seen anything like that. There's no wonder when you read Matthew 23, you read it and you go, well, Jesus is kind of being a little harsh to the Pharisees there, isn't he? No. You go back to John, at the beginning of John 1 and John 2, when John looks and sees the Pharisees coming down into the water to be baptized, he says, you brood of vipers, who told you to get down in here? And you read that and go, man, he's kind of harsh on those people. No, he's not. They earned every bit of that treatment. When you read that sentence alone, because why did they not want to defile themselves? Because John tells you they didn't enter the governor's headquarters because they didn't want to defile themselves so that what? You got to be joking me. Y'all think y'all belong around the table to eat the Passover meal? You must be outside your mind. That's why I said, when you read this, man, it turns my stomach to think, man, these people were some nasty people. Number one, he ain't done anything wrong. We know that. And Jesus calls him on it and says, look, you got to slap me in the face. What did I say that was wrong? If I said something that was wrong, then so be it. But if I didn't, then what'd you hit me for? And didn't have an answer for it. I adjure you by the power of God. Tell me if you're the Son of God. And Jesus says, it says you say. It's exactly what you said. Now you're going to see the Son of Man coming on the right hand of power. And in my Bible, by the way, in Matthew 26, when he's talking about that, and in Mark 14, both places, the word power is capitalized, which tells me it ain't somebody you want to mess with. When he's talking about the right hand of power and it's capitalized, that's the creator of the world. And Jesus says, you understand what you're doing. You are setting yourselves against the power of God. By what you're doing right now, you are setting yourselves against the power of God. You better tread carefully, and they didn't. They didn't. Now, go ahead. Did somebody have a hand up? Did I see a hand up? Somebody? Maybe I just thought I did. Okay. So next week, so I'm going to stop there because I want to get in. The interaction between Jesus and Pilate is absolutely fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. Of all the people that Jesus deals with in these hours of this, and I'm using this term very loosely, this trial, of all the people that have just a little bit of sense about him, guess who it is? Pilate. Of all people. Of all the people that Jesus talked to, the one that has at least a little bit of sense about him is the heathen. The heathen looks at Jesus and says, what did you do? Well, why aren't we having this conversation? Hey, did y'all realize it? Did y'all have the wrong man? He hadn't done anything. They're like, no, that's the right man. And Pilate's like, but I don't get it. If he didn't do anything wrong, why are y'all demanding that I kill him? I'm not doing that. Y'all take him and kill him. Well, we can't do that. Again, we'll talk about their hypocrisy, but their interactions are fascinating. If I don't stop now, I'll end up keeping y'all till noon trying to teach all this because I need to save it for next week. Thank y'all for being here. I appreciate it. I'll cover one more week and then y'all can have the old preacher back.